Wide receivers. Speaking of a guy that I thought I was savvy and picked up off waivers and then dropped a couple weeks later, Marquez Callaway going against the Seahawks. Wide receiver 28, 8 spots above the experts. You also like Brandon Aiyuk, another guy I loved at the beginning of the year that it has been a little disappointing. Going against the Colts, wide receiver 35, 5 spots higher than the experts.
Yeah, I just think Callaway, you remember that like Monday night preseason game where he lit it up? Well, we get Monday night game again. And yeah, I know that seems stupid to like put our money on a preseason Monday night translation.
After that, when that game happened, I got a text from you as he caught his second touchdown that said, and you said, please tell me that you have picked up Marquez Callaway.
Yeah.
and I immediately picked him up and was real smug about it for about 2 weeks.
And I feel that way again this week. He had 2 touchdowns last week. Yes, one of them was a Hail Mary, second half, blah, blah. That's because they're finally letting Jameis uncork it. They're finally letting Callaway do his thing. And Callaway finally has easy matchups. He started with 3 of the hardest possible matchups for cornerbacks. Then he got an easy one finally, and he lit it up. And now he has Seattle giving up the 6th most points to receivers, Tampa Bay coming up in a week. I think you're going to get a nice stretch of Callaway being that receiver you need in your lineup. He's only 30% rostered right now. I'm throwing him in everywhere I possibly can because a Hail Mary on Monday night. What's better than that? I certainly think he's going to get deep for at least 1 score, even with Traquan back. Great. Traquan back, take some defensive attention. I really think Marquez is going to have a day against this bad Seattle defense. And I love Brandon Aiyuk. We talked about Indy and their struggles defending deep. Look at Brandon Cooks last week. Look at Marquise Brown 2 weeks ago going for like 40 points. I mean, they cannot defend deep. And Brandon Aiyuk profiles very similarly to Cooks and Marquise Brown, the exact type of receiver that Indy is struggling with. And they had their number 1 corner for those games. Xavier Rhodes is not Xavier Rhodes. I forget who it is. Their number 1 corner is knocked out this week. That's all I know. And Brandon Aiyuk, yes, he's been trouble all year, but Jimmy Garoppolo being back, yes, I know fantasy purposes for quarterback, not as exciting as Trey Lance, but for the wide receivers, that certainly is a nice boost. Debo is my number 5 receiver. I love him, but Brandon Aiyuk would not be shocked at all to see him start turning around his season as early as this week, fresh off the bye. Let's get this guy involved.
All right, lower. Makes me sad to see that T. Higgins is on this list, but I do get it. You got him as your wide receiver 25, 3 below the experts. Really not a huge discrepancy. You've also got Allen Robinson, wide receiver 37, 11 spots below the experts. Rondale Moore going against Houston. You got him at 41, 6 below the experts. Let me just make a beeline for Allen Robinson real quick.
Please do.
First of all, 2 things. First of all, I don't know how the experts can have this guy wide receiver 26. Second of all, you need to ease up on Allen Robinson. Like we get it. He's terrible. He's not terrible, but for fantasy purposes, there's no point. This is getting to the point where it's like the experts are going to continually rank this guy in a ridiculous spot. What'd you say his highest thing of the year was? Like wide receiver 45 or something one week? Something like that. Like
he hasn't cracked the top 40.
I mean, I think you're too high on him for God's sakes. Like he's not going to be the third. I mean, well, I don't know. Maybe because all these guys are out on bye, maybe he'll be 37. This poor guy.
He's awful. T. Higgins, though. Let's start with him. The Ravens are very, very good against outside receiver. Marlon Humphrey on the outside. Their DVOA against outside receivers, top 3 in the game. Their DVO against the slot, one of the worst in the game. So it's one of those matches where Higgins is always out wide. He's actually been the wide receiver 30, 29, 44, and 57. He's been a touchdown or bust type of option. And if you think he's going to score this week, great, go for it. But they're one of the better defenses in terms of allowing touchdowns to outside receivers. I don't think T. Higgins is going to have that day that we expect. As we mentioned, Allen Robinson, just to reiterate, wide receiver 67, 45, 78, 51, 66, and 46. 45.
So how are you coming up with wide receiver 37 there?
I don't understand.
Let's not even talk about the experts. Let's just talk about your
26. They're wide receiver 26.
No, that's crazy. But honestly, based on what you just said, 37's kind of crazy.
It's
8 spots higher than he's ever been.
And it's one of those things, okay, every single week, guys, like, and I'm sure he's in the comments, and I love it if he is. Mike Clay over on Facebook. Love you, brother. Every week he's like, well, this is the week where they're going to be down and they're going to have to throw, and it's the right narrative, right? And yes, that's true. They're down against Tampa Bay. They're going to have to throw against Tampa Bay, and it doesn't matter because he's had the right narrative for multiple weeks. He's had the
narrative only takes you so far. If I were all of a sudden getting a shot in the NFL this week, the narrative would be amazing. They just be like, this old guy who's never really played football, he's completely out of shape. He's going to come in. What a hero story. And the truth of the story would be Nat the Truth Jones was killed on his first drop back of the game when Aaron Donald came in and throttled him. And so the narrative did not exactly – it'll only take you so far, folks.
Right. Exactly. And even you look at last week, he was streaking wide open down the field. He should have had a 70-yard touchdown. But guess what? He didn't because Fields missed him. Fields is not looking for him. Fields doesn't have the reads down yet. Don't get Allen Robinson in your lineups. It's just as good as the narrative is, and I understand the narrative, I'm not playing him. In fact, I'm probably cutting him where I have to at this point. And the last one, Rondale Moore, I've got a lot of starts about him, so I just want to toss him out there. Yes, it's Houston. They're pathetic. I get it. But Rondale Moore has never played more than 55% of the snaps. He's in and out. It's just so inconsistent in terms of usage. And against Houston, who's surprisingly the 5th hardest matchup for receivers, not because they're good, but because they're actually so bad that you don't need to throw against them.
You don't have to throw.
You don't have to use your Rondale Moores. You don't have to go into 5 receiver sets where Rondale Moore actually plays. He's been the wide receiver 105, 68, 26. He had 12 points against San Fran, and then 69. It is 2 good weeks amidst a shitstorm of awful games. And yeah, Houston seems like it should be a good game, but they're sneakily actually tough against receivers because of how bad they actually are, which doesn't make sense, but it kind of makes sense if you know what I mean.
I hear you. And there's a lot of choices in Arizona too to throw the ball to if you choose to throw, which seems like you don't have to. Hail Mary, Donovan Peoples-Jones tonight, 15% rostered.
No longer.
Lazard, right. But I was going to say, like, we're going to scratch that. Alan Lazard, 3% rostered. And also he's going against Washington, and Kendrick Bourne, 4% rostered, going against the Jets. Anybody going against the Jets, probably worth a crapshoot, right?
Yeah, and shockingly, the Jets are actually the 2nd hardest matchup for receivers. I don't know how or why they have nobody on the secondary I could name right now. Literally no one. I actually have no idea who's in their secondary. They're terrible. But somehow they're limiting teams. Maybe it's the Houston narrative where they're so bad against the run and they're just bad that you don't need to throw against them. Let's start with Lazard. He had a touchdown last week, first week without MVS. And now you get Washington, who is giving up the most yards per reception other than Tennessee, the 2nd most points to wide receivers. I think Lazard has a nice deep touchdown against Washington this week. And as a Hail Mary in this bye week hell, all you really want is one long touchdown. So I don't hate him at all as a streamer. Was the wide receiver 30 last week. I think he could get into that range this next week. Kendrick Bourne has actually been sneaky, pretty damn good these last few weeks. I shouldn't say last few weeks. He had 19 3 weeks ago. He had 14 last week. It's all big play or bust. But against the Jets, I could see this guy shaking free for a big play. So Kendrick Bourne, Lazard, if you need a Hail Mary, big play, these are the guys you're looking at.
All right. Must watch now or never for an A.J. Brown breakout week. Also, can Jalen Waddle keep rolling? And then we're going to roll through tight ends real fast so we can hit this growing mailbag.
Absolutely. A.J. Brown, all you guys holding on to him at this point, if he doesn't get it against Kansas City done, this kind of feels like the Jags all over again. No Julio against the Jaguars, and he didn't get it done. But against Kansas City, where they're actually going to need points, they didn't need him against the Jags because Henry was just doing his thing. You're going to need points against Kansas City. If he is not a factor in this game, then when is he ever going to be a factor? So this is it. It's now or never. If you hadn't traded him already, you have him on your roster. You're either getting a game out of A.J. Brown or you're just fucked the rest of the year. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. And then Jalen Waddle, he's had, out of his 4 games, 2 of them, he's had 14 or more. I mean, it's crazy, the target share he's seeing. Let's see if he can finally get deep, keep it rolling against Atlanta. I'm very excited to see, can this guy really be a top 20 receiver moving forward? That's where I have him in my rankings. I'd love to have him in my lineups this week. And I'm excited to see, does this guy keep it rolling? What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.